All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And I'm going to now be going through the very last article in our series, Getting Started with ASP.NET MVC 5, Introduction to ASP.NET MVC 5. We've done Getting Started, adding a controller, adding a view, adding a model, creating a connection string, and working with SQL Server Local DB, accessing your model's data from a controller, examining the edit methods in view, adding search, adding a new field, and adding validation, which we just completed. So now we're going to go through examining the details and delete method. So that's it. That's the last one that we have to go through. All right, I'll have a few words to say then at the end of this as far as what I'm going to be doing in here next. So, in this part of the tutorial, you'll examine the automatically generated details and delete methods. So we are first to open the movie controller and examine the details method. So let's go in and do that. I've got movies.cs open right now. Close that, and I'm going to open up the movies controller file, and we're going to look for the details method. Index, there's details right there. The MVC scaffolding engine, so what we did when we created this, it added a comment showing the HTTP request that invokes the method. Now I changed it to add that it could be done either of these ways to show you what was going on. In this case, it's a GET request with the 3 URL segments, those being, in both cases, the controller, the associated method, and even though that one's in lowercase, it wouldn't matter if they were both in lowercase, it's case insensitive, and the ID value as a parameter here and as part of a query string here. Code First makes it easy to search for data using the find method. An important security feature built into this method is that the code verifies that the find method has found a movie before the code tries to do anything with it. For example, a hacker could introduce errors into a site by changing the URL created by links from one, basically, and they show that in here just so you see it. So by putting in something like checking for record 1 to putting in some value that doesn't exist. All right. So it says, examine the delete and delete confirmed methods. Well, there's delete right here. And we've got the get and the post. If it's easier to, if you want to see all of them at once, we can go back and look at it in here. You will note that the HTTP get delete method doesn't delete the specified movie. It returns a view of the movie where you can submit the deletion. Performing a delete operation in response to a get or anything else with a get, be that a delete, a create, or any operation that changes the data, as we mentioned previously, introduces a security hole. So the post method that you see here, and let's take a look. Let's go back to the actual code. So there's the get. And here's the post. So notice there's no DB save changes here. We're just returning something when we're doing a get. With a post, we're actually making a change. So the post method that deletes the data is named delete confirmed. To give the HTTP, and that's right here, post method a unique signature or name. The Common Language Runtime, also known as the CLR, requires overloaded methods to have unique parameter signatures. So in other words, they can have the same name, but the parameters that are listed in the parentheses must be different. However, here you need two delete methods, one for get and one for post, that both have the same parameter signature. To sort this out, you can do a couple of things. One is to give the methods different names. That's what the scaffolding mechanism did in the preceding example. However, this introduces a small problem. ASP.NET maps segments of a URL to action methods by name. And if you rename a method, routing normally wouldn't be able to find that method. The solution is what you see in the example, which is to add the action name delete attribute to the delete confirm method. This effectively performs mapping for the routing system so that a URL that includes /delete/ for a post request will find the delete confirm method. Another common way to avoid this type of problem is to have identical names and signatures is to artificially change the signature of the post to include an unused parameter. And they don't show that here, but they show it in the write-up right here. Is not used. So the author mentions here we now have a complete MVC ASP.NET application that stores data in a local database. We can create new records, we can read existing records, we can update records, we can delete for records, and we can search by either genre or title. Now the last thing that's mentioned in here on these next steps that's on page 7, this is it. It says after you have built and tested a web application, the next step is to make it available to other people to use over the internet. To do that, you have to deploy it to a hosting provider. And I'm not sure if IWT.rankin.edu, which is basically where I have students post their stuff, if you are able to deploy ASP.NET web application there. If not, we will probably sign up for the free Azure trial account where you can host up to 10 websites. All right, the author has a tutorial here, deploy a secure ASP.NET membership app, etc. to Azure. All right, so the author says here feedback is welcome. I think they did a really good job of going through this. Occasionally I get asked questions such as, Jeff, it's neat that you do this, maybe it's nice that you do this, why do you go through all this work? And the answer is twofold. First and foremost, in all seriousness, and I'm not asking for kudos or anything else, but I do it for you. My hope is that you have a better understanding of what we're doing by me going through this. Second, and kind of a secondary benefit, is for me. This is stuff that I typically do in class, so by doing it here and taping it, if students want to get ahead and look at it, they're able to do so. Plus, it reinforces my own knowledge, or sometimes, as you found out, lack thereof. All right? If you enjoy these presentations, or even if you don't, you have some feedback, and I like to consider all feedback as being constructive. If you would, if you don't mind, I'd always appreciate it if you would go out and send me any kind of feedback. Again, as I mentioned, all feedback, in my opinion, is constructive, and you can send that feedback to jpscott@rankin.edu. All right, so this is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I am now finished with this, and last thing, what I'm going to do, and I know I mentioned this before earlier, but I think this was not in here. I believe this was back in the guise of when I was going over the something earlier. I don't even remember what it was, but let me, all right, I want to bring up on my desktop here. Hopefully this will all make sense in just a minute to you. I've got 3 different copies of a St. Louis Blues website that I've created. One of them I created using just straight HTML. One of them I did with Bootstrap, and then I went back and redid it again with MobiRise. I'm not going to do the MobiRise here, but I'm going to go back and recreate the simple St. Louis Blues website, and I'm going to do it in ASP.NET simply from an empty project. Then I'm going to go back and I'm going to redo it using the project template. And then later, not now because this will be a little later, I'm going to go back and then recreate it one last time and as an ASP.NET MVC project, and it'll have a store in it too. I hope to get all that stuff done as soon as possible. Thanks for listening.